Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley and I'm your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter for On SI, covering the Jacksonville Jaguars every single day since the 2019 season, and we are continuing to march through another offseason together. As always, you can find the best and most comprehensive Jacksonville Jaguars coverage right from us at Jaguars On SI. We deliver you the best coverage locally and even nationally. You can also follow our 24/7, around-the-clock, 100% free, boots-on-the-ground coverage on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI, and you can find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguar. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. It has certainly been an interesting last couple of weeks for the Jacksonville Jaguars, just in terms of the momentum of mock drafts. Of course, mock drafts, don't always tell the full picture. A lot of times they're just projections, they're just guesses. But to see the consensus move so swiftly on the Jacksonville Jaguars, you're seeing insiders such as Jonathan Jones suggested. You're seeing the Athletic's Dane Brugler, who, for my money, is the best draft expert out there. He mocked Ashton Jeanty to the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5. It certainly seems like the momentum is, I wouldn't say moving away from Mason Graham, but definitely more attention shifting toward the idea of, could the Jacksonville Jaguars actually take Ashton Jeanty at number 5? At the very least, it seems like national media is starting to propose that question just a week before the draft. And when it starts to happen a week before the draft, it makes you wonder, why is that now seemingly where there is smoke? Now, looking at it from all angles, here's how I'm attacking the entire idea of the recent suggestions that Jeanty could go to the Jaguars at 5 and my stance on it. You guys know my stance on what if I would do it, but my stance on if I believe it or not. So the way I see it, I think as of today, the first 4 picks in the draft are obvious. I think Cam Ward goes number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. I think Travis Hunter goes number 2 to the Cleveland Browns. I think Abdul Carter goes number 3 to the New York Giants. And I think Will Campbell goes number 4 to the New England Patriots. I believe that is going to be the top 4. I'm not sure I'm going to change that by the time of the draft. And I think even if there was a change from that, maybe the change is Carter goes 2 and Hunter goes 3, etc. I think the Browns are going to see Hunter as a, generational talent, best player in their draft, and take him. But that's how I see the top 4 playing out right now. So now you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. The top edge rusher is gone. The top offensive lineman's gone. The top cornerback / top receiver is gone. 2 true blue chip prospects, and Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter aren't there. Who do you have available to you at number 5? You have Mason Graham from Michigan. You have Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. You have Armin Imbaugh from Missouri. You have Jalen Walker from Georgia. You have Tyler Warren from Penn State. Ted McMillan, from Arizona. Obviously, there are other names, Michael Williams from Georgia, Will Johnson from Michigan, Kelvin Banks from Texas, etc., and so forth. But it isn't, in terms of value, a great spot to be in terms of the talent that's there in that pool. How many of those guys should go number 5 overall? Not many. I had my On SI mock draft with all the other beat reporters from the On SI network, and I was faced with exactly this question. And I went Mason Graham over Ashton Jeanty, but those are really the only 2 players I debated. And I debated Ashton Jeanty despite me telling you all for weeks now that I would not even consider the pick. But just because of where the Jaguars are likely going to be able to pick from, I think he's the only other guy that you can really put in consideration with Graham. Now, does that mean I think they should, pick him over Mason Graham? Absolutely not. I went with Mason Graham at the pick. I believe that's what the Jaguars should do if things play out like this. But it's starting to make you wonder if the lack of strength at the top of the draft class is the reason why people are starting to connect these dots. And maybe that's, if Jacksonville made this pick, maybe that would be their rationale. They'll never come out and say it's not a great draft class, but no, they could say Ashton Jeanty was far and away the best talent, best player on the board, which in a lot of ways is correct. Is there a prospect you absolutely can't pass on at number 5 in favor of Ashton Jeanty? I think that's a valid question. I'd still take Mason Graham. Now, I understand there are red flags. He doesn't have the prototypical build, length, look, really, of a defensive lineman you take in the top 5. But he has undisputed production. And I'm not talking like sacks, tackles for loss, stuff like that, but just disruption metrics, against the run, pressure rate, win rate, run stuff rate. He comes out top of the class in really all of those. I don't think it's a slam dunk he's going to be the best defensive tackle in this class in 5 years. I think Derek Harmon from Oregon has a pretty good chance to be that. I watched, Ashton Jeanty against Oregon, his performance against them last night, and, taking my notes, the amount of times Harmon comes up, he's absolute freak of nature. So it's similar to the running back question. You can't know Ashton Jeanty is going to be the best running back in the draft class. It's just a level of overconfidence that I think it's impossible to have, and it's irresponsible to assume you have. I think the Jaguars, I think James Gladstone's a bright guy. I think he would say the same thing. He said he doesn't have the superpower to get to know the intricacies of a person within 1 hour. I think he's self-aware enough to know that, taking a player at that selection, there's a certain level of randomness, a certain level of, things have to play out. So I think that applies to both Mason Graham and Ashton Jeanty. It's just with Graham, I believe you're getting a pro-ready player. I believe you're getting a guy who can instantly have some production, instantly help Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. Will he ever be a double-digit sack, all-pro Chris Jones type? I don't know. Nobody knows. If I'd had to venture to say, I'd say probably not. But I do think he can be, maybe even a tier above what Christian Wilkins was from Miami Dolphins. I think he can be a top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL. He has the tape, he has the production, etc. But there certainly is, when you look at the national mocks, a lot of smoke right now for Ashton Jeanty. And I think if you are the Jaguars, I do think those are the only two real talents who are worthy enough to go number 5 to consider. So I see why more mocks are going that way. I wouldn't make the selection. I've gone on record saying that, but I've also gone on record saying I'd be more surprised by those selections. I don't think Will Campbell's going to be there at 5 for the Jaguars to consider anymore. So as of today, the weekend before the draft, I'd say, other than Mason Graham, Jeanty, you should probably put up there as most likely to be the pick. And this isn't me reporting anything, sourcing anything. I've said, this new regime is playing it very close to the vest. They've done a great job of not letting stuff get out, which is obviously a priority of theirs. You look at their top 30 visit, philosophy. But I think just looking at it logically, I don't think they'll take so many of these other prospects at 5. And I think these are the two whose talent level really matches with the value of the pick. Again, with that said, we kind of know what the sell would be if they take, Jeanty, that one of the best talents in the draft, generational running back prospect. If you want to put that label on him, I'd say, Bijan, in my opinion, scouting both of them, I'd have Bijan probably a little bit above him. I still think he's Pro Bowl, all-pro level talent, type of potential at the position. But the obvious sell would be, that he could help Trevor Lawrence. And it makes sense on the surface. You add a star running back talent, you add a great offensive mind and schemer and a guy who has shown he can scheme up the run game in Liam Cohen. And you would think those two together, along with some of the signings along the offensive line, can really take the run game to the next level. With that said, I am just such a believer that you devote more resources to the offensive line first. And if you fix the offensive line, then running backs really of most types can thrive. And I think in this draft class, you can find those kind of running backs later on in the draft, day 2, day 3, etc. But definitely seems like there's been a lot of national media mock draft smoke around Jeanty, and that seems to be the rationale why.